The palm trees in my background didn't give you a hint. We are in Jaffna, at the Alfred Dorapa Stadium to be exact. The reason why we are here is because we are today kickstarting a brand new series, a series through which we'll help you understand why Sri Lanka is the way it is from an economic standpoint and what we can do to go from developing country to hopefully a developed country. Here's a thesis that we are going to begin with. Historically speaking, any country that has had access to a sea, has had a history of shipping and trade, is generally a rich country. But Sri Lanka isn't. And if you start with that as the root question and you try to figure out what has led to it, you arrive at a whole bunch of other things which we will discuss in this series. So, strap in for the journey and I hope you really enjoy it. Now, your next question might be, why the northern province? Well, there are a few reasons. The first being that this is essentially the youngest urban province or urban township Sri Lanka has post-war. I mean, Jaffna has a really long history as a city, as a heritage city in Sri Lanka. But if you really look at Sri Lanka's recent history, the pre-war period and the post-war period are two complete different uh, beasts, so to speak. And I feel like if you consider the day the war ended as day one, Sri Lanka really is a pretty young country, essentially not even 20 years old. So Jaffna, in that sense, is the youngest city because while the other provinces and other major urban centers in Sri Lanka have had that chance to, be relatively more shielded from the war, and thus they were able to still carry on life as normal to a certain extent. Jaffna bore the brunt of the war, and which means it has a lot of structural issues holding it back, which the other provinces never had to deal with. So Jaffna, if you look at it today, or more accurately, the northern province, is the lowest contributor to Sri Lanka's GDP as of now.
The war deprived the North of the chance to develop productive capacity, forcing households to rely on remittances, just long enough until another family member can migrate and continue the cycle. Thus, the province cannot create stable jobs.
So Jaffna has really high poverty levels in the sense that 1 out of 5 households is in poverty. And the unemployment rate for Jaffna specifically, remember the northern province is Jaffna, Mana, Mulaitu, Kilinochchi, and Babunia. But for Jaffna specifically, the rate of unemployment is a full 100 basis points higher than the national average of Sri Lanka.
Mangoes, grapes, palmyra, and fisheries are a few things the northern province is known for, where the primary driver of economic activity is agriculture. This sector contributes to the province's economy almost as much as the other two sectors, industry and services combined.
The economy here is very simple in the sense that it's primarily agriculture-based, is more or less very informal, and employment patterns tend to be seasonal. I mean, of course, there is an element of government jobs and small and medium enterprises, but the vast majority of people in this province are employed in the informal sector. While there is a lot of infrastructure investments being carried out, the province as a whole suffers from a lack of industrialization.
Do you guys see that bridge over there?
And then this side, you have Fisheries Harbor. This is a lagoon. And on that side is the Indian Ocean. Now, this brings me to an interesting point, which is that while infrastructure investments are necessary to get the economy of a certain region going, the thing with infrastructure investments is that once, say, a bridge or road is built, the jobs created by that will disappear because, what you want to build is built. And then on this side, you have that Fisheries Harbor, which to a certain extent there's an element of seasonality to it. The GDP of any country is usually driven by three sectors: the agricultural sector, the industrial sector, and the services sector.
This is how things look when you break down Sri Lanka's GDP. While the services sector is dominant, the agriculture sector hides an ugly truth.
The agriculture sector is way behind and it contributes about 8 to 10% of GDP to the economy, but it employs about 25% of the workforce, which means there is a lot of inefficiency and basically low productivity.
So, if lasting prosperity is to truly come to the north, creating manufacturing jobs is the real need of the hour.
The beautiful thing about the manufacturing sector is that when you have a relatively high proportion of unskilled labor, it is the only kind of economic sector which allows you to employ a large number of them at once and train them on the job. Now, you can't do that with the services sector because services, by definition, for most part, is knowledge work. And to have a very big knowledge services sector, you need to have a really highly educated workforce, not highly literate, highly educated. And for most countries in this part of the world, that's a tough job. You have a lot of unskilled labor, which you also need to take off the streets because otherwise it leads to problems like social unrest, petty crime, and things like that.
So now the question is, how exactly do you bring manufacturing jobs to the northern province?
Well, I've got a few notes in my little brown notebook. First things first, we need to bring the right kind of FDI. So typically, FDIs are of two types. One is export-oriented FDI. The other one is the kind of map and development or tire jumping kind of FDI, where you basically go into a country and invest so that you can bypass some sort of tariff that is applied on the whole country. We don't need the tariff jumping kind of FDI. It is anyway a dying beast. What we need is more export-oriented FDI. And one of the best ideas potentially could be just looking beyond the Indian Ocean across the Fox Strait and looking at Tamil Nadu. Imagine if the northern province could plug into the automotive manufacturing value chain of Tamil Nadu, which is India's automotive hub.
Tamil Nadu, the Detroit of India.
Chennai, country's Detroit.
Let me start by asking you about what magic words you whispered in the ear of Ford management to get them to return.
Vietnamese EV maker VinFast has opened its first assembly plant in Tamil Nadu.
Imagine how great it would be if you could convince Maruti Suzuki to open up a plant here in Jaffna where they could manufacture all sorts of plastic parts that they need for all their cars. And that would create a lot of jobs and it would be really, really great too. It would be a type of sustainable job creation. What I also think needs to happen is that there needs to be a lot more competition brought in between provinces so that chief ministers or governors can compete against each other to attract FDIs into their own provinces. One of the reasons why most FDI investments end up in the Western province by default is because things are often decided at government level, like central government level, and the Western province is the closest to the Colombo port, and we also do a very bad job of selling Sri Lanka. So the FDI investment basically ends up in some sort of industrial zone that is really close to Colombo. That should not happen. We need to figure out ways to spread economic development away from Colombo and the Western province and letting provinces compete against each other to begin investments into their respective provinces is a really great way to do that. Of course, it also means you need someone up there who can dream a little bit. Now, does that mean you are going to shut out all domestic enterprises? No, not really. You can bring in foreign direct investments by partnering with foreign companies who have way more advanced technology and learn from them through knowledge transfer, and also give space for local entities to invest in those same provinces. They both can coexist, and only then would we be able to create a really good future for the people here. So I think that's what the secret sauce is. a little bit of brainy, a little bit of competition, and a whole lot of political willpower to get things moving on the ground and make sure investments are expedited provided they have all the necessary clearances. And you don't have to let investors go from pillar to post trying to get approvals. So that's all that needs to be done.